All right, welcome back to the Stokastic NHL DFS strategy show. I'm your host, Jake Harris, filling in for Josh Harris just for today. And I'm joined by my buddy, Slim Cliffy. Cliffy, how was the few days we had off there of NHL?
Not bad, actually. I was one of the lucky ones. I got to travel to go visit family. I wasn't stuck at an airport or sliding off a highway somewhere. So it was good to go visit some family, get a few days of rest, watch some Christmas movies, enjoy some Christmas food and some Christmas drink, and ready to get back at it here. Pretty nice 11-game slate we got here tonight. Kind of tough when you're coming right out of the Christmas break. I think that's one thing maybe the viewers should know is that it's built into the players' contracts. They can't travel on Boxing Day. So every team that's on the road had to fly out early this morning. So whether they got some airport legs or something, I guess we'll find out here when the slate locks in about 5 hours.
Yeah, so there's going to be probably quite a bit of pregame skate news, would you say?
Yeah, I would say so, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even the beats that are covering the teams, like we're not seeing a whole lot. Some players returning, some players that are out that are being shown as in on some of the lineup sites. So we'll do our best here to break it down. And then at the end, we do have a little bit of a twist if we can get through the games pretty quickly here. As you guys know, liking and subscribing to the show really helps us out, to the channel. If you hit the notification bell, you'll know when this show, as well as other shows, there's NBA on tonight, Deeper Dive Live Before Lock, as well as those shows when they go live. And make sure you're signing up for the Stokastic Hall of Fame by changing your avatar on DraftKings and FanDuel. The reason you would want to do this is because you can win a month of the Stokastic Plus Platinum, which is $120 value. The way you do that is by going to stokastic.com/avatar. Placed in the top 3 of the contest of over 5,000 entrants for NHL. That'll be the mini max or the $5 150 max on DraftKings, and I think the $4 on FanDuel as well. Then you just tweet your wins. You get the win, or you get the top 3 finish, and then you get another $120 of Stokastic Plus Platinum value on top of that. So it's a pretty good deal. And yeah, let's get into the first few games. And then at the end, we're going to build a quick lineup. Cliffy and I will show you how we would talk through building the lineups with the tools on the site, top stacks, the lineup builder, et cetera, et cetera. We've got Boston and Ottawa. We've got a 3.7 implied total for the Bruins, 2.8 for the Senators. Swayman and Cam Talbot expected to go here. Neither confirmed, although I think I saw that Swayman's expected. Haven't heard much news on the Senators just yet. Seeing pretty much the same on both sides as far as forward line combos. So I don't have a ton more than that. What do you like in this game, Cliffy?
Yeah, this is a weird game because it's really a battle of lines that are struggling to score at 5-on-5, and a lot of it driven by percentages. The Ottawa top line shooting 6.3% this year. The Ottawa second line shooting 5.2% this year. And the Boston top line shooting 5.9%. Now, this is all at 5-on-5. All of them are generating a fair amount of offense. The top line's definitely more than the second lines. It's just that they're not scoring. And that's something Josh and I have talked about. Has been an issue with the Boston top line going back to last year with Jake DeBrusk there instead of David Pasternak. So these teams are really all about the power play. I think if you look at Brad Marchand's numbers this year, 2/3 of his points have come on the power play. So these are two teams that are heavily reliant on the power play. And it's not really a good spot for Ottawa in that sense, right? Ottawa does draw a fair amount of power plays on their own. They're actually first in the league now at 3.9 power plays per game. But the Boston penalty kill has been pretty strong basically all season. The only thing that gives me a little pause to maybe using Ottawa here tonight is the fact that Swayman is starting. Linus Ullmark was a goalie that I had penciled in to use just in my DFS lineups because he was having such a wonderful season. Swayman, on the other hand, he is not having such a wonderful season. 898 save percentage, on arguably the best defensive team in the league is pretty much unacceptable. So I do have a little bit of interest in that Ottawa top line for that reason, is that they're not coming in with much ownership on FanDuel because they are, way overpriced and pretty low on DraftKings as well. Top Stacks tool has them at about 3%. I don't know if in a single lineup with 22 teams on the slate, or three, if you're three maxing or something like that, if I'd run out to play the Ottawa top line, but if you're playing 50 or 150 lineups, I think you have to consider them. Just because if Swayman has one of his off games, this could be, 4 goals pretty quickly for Ottawa. So I do have some interest in the Ottawa top line, but I think I'd have to play a lot of lineups to get there. On the other side, it's kind of the same thing that I always say. I do like the spot for Boston 1. It's not a terrible defensive matchup. Ottawa penalty kill is good, but certainly not nearly as good as Boston's. Ottawa does take penalties at an above average rate. So I do like the Boston top line, but I think you have to find a way to get David Pastrnak in there. He just plays too many minutes. He's too valuable to their power play scoring. So maybe taking DeBrusk off, putting Pastrnak on, even taking Bergeron off and going with a triple winger if you have a double center stack, or, a center one off you might like. That's kind of the way I'm looking at this game. There might be some goals here. It's just you're kind of relying on the goalies to really let down, and anything can happen in a single game. But I do like the top lines, but I think I'd have to play a lot of lineups to get there.
Yeah, I have both of the top lines written down, but not like priority plays for me. So if I'm playing, I think I have 100 registered in the $5. I've been playing 100 in there quite a bit. If I'm doing that, I will end up on some Ottawa 1. I will end up on some Boston 1, but I don't think I'm going to have a heavy stance on either one. Like, I don't think I get to either of them at double-digit exposures or anything like that. I like the idea of adding in Pastrnak with Bergeron and Marchand, although that gets really expensive really fast. And there are some other top stacks that we have on the top stacks tool with a higher percentage chance of being a top 2 line for the night. So with this being an 11-game slate, I think we'll have pieces of each of the top line. I don't have a ton on the defenseman, but I did see Hamonic's minutes were way up last game, and he's a guy who does block shots. Boston's a team that does attempt a lot of shots for 3,300. I like Hamonic a little bit. Anyone else you want to mention before we move it on?
Just a reminder that it's still Hampus Lindholm on the top power play unit for Boston. Charlie McAvoy, he's, kind of like the rest of the Bruins. He's been fairly reliant on power play production for his points so far this season. So I do like Lindholm as well. I think you can even just use him as a one-off if you're worried about the expensive Boston forwards here. But yeah, it's probably either Lindholm or Hamonic for me out of this one.
Cool. We got a super chat from our buddy S. Goodman. He says, if you had to recommend a 10.6 unit wager tonight, what would it be? You have any that come to mind for you, Mr. C?
I mean, nothing that's appealing to me right off the top of my head. We're going to get to a team that I kind of like a little bit later on the slate. I like the spot here tonight, and it's the Winnipeg Jets. In a home matchup against Minnesota. Not sure I would recommend betting 10 units on them, but I think Winnipeg could pull out a pretty nice surprise against the Wild here.
So we'll talk about more wagers a little bit later when we talk about our sponsor, BetMGM, and the risk-free bet up to $1,000. One of the guys I had written down for that segment was Brad Marchand. I saw on BetMGM he was I had this written down somewhere on my sheet here. Over 2.5 for plus money. He's only attempted on average 3 shots in his last 5 games. But it does seem like a good matchup where, if he attempts 4 or 5 shots, you can get 3 of them on goal here. So I like Marchand at plus money. That was the one that I saw. We just happened to start with that game. Saul teed me up for a good one. So we'll move it on to the Capitals and the Rangers. We got a 2.7 implied total for the Caps, 3.3 for the Rangers. Darcy Kemper and Igor Shesterkin expected to start here. The big news that we saw here was Kravtsov. Is it Kravtsov? The V with the T and then the S afterwards really trips me up. How do you say his name?
I think you just try to kind of sneak the T in there a little bit and go craft soft.
All right.
You got to say kind of fast, like craft soft.
All right. Yeah, I just got to speed through it next time and not get caught up. Anyways, he's $2,500 skating with Zibanejad and Panarin. Those guys are pretty cheap, actually, if you add in Kravtsov. Kreider, Trocheck, and VC skated together at morning skate this morning. And then on the lineup builder, if you're following along, Hedel with Lafreniere and Kakko. A lot of tough names here on our New York Rangers. They've got a 3.3 implied total with 3 playable lines. Which one is the most appealing to you tonight?
Well, I did write up the Rangers top line, that being Zibanejad, Panarin, and Kravtsov. I'll bring it up here. Over on Stokastic.com, just head on over to the NHL section, brought up, I have my picks article all written up. And Panarin and Kravtsov, they did play a little bit earlier this year, which is something I mentioned with Vincent Trocheck. They didn't play with Zibanejad, but they were generating good offense at 5-on-5, 2.8 expected goals per 60 minutes, 3.7 actual goals in about 65 minutes together. That is not bad. And as you mentioned, Kravtsov, min price on DK, near the min on FanDuel. So it's relatively inexpensive to stack them. I mean, you get 2 out of the 3 guys on the top power play unit. Now, Washington does have a pretty good penalty kill. That is something that has kind of helped them all season long. But we've seen the Rangers power play be absolutely lethal this year, particularly in the early parts of the season, not so much lately. But considering the price, I really do like that Panarin, Zibanejad, Kravtsov trio. I think we haven't seen the best of Kravtsov yet. When he's been in the NHL, has been largely on the 4th line, sometimes on the 3rd line. So I think we could see a good performance out of that top line. Honestly, all 3 Rangers lines are realistically in play, right? Especially where Trocheck and Kreider, you get 2 out of the 3 on the top power play unit. Those guys have been good together, not generating as much offensively as far as expected goals go, but they're still doing just fine. And of course, the kid line is one of those cheap stacks that you can put in with your Bostons or your Torontos or your Edmontons and things like that. So they do have 3 playable lines. I like the Zibanejad line the best. On the Cap side, they're kind of, the top line's kind of having the issue that we just mentioned with Boston and Ottawa, and that's just finishing. Like they've skated over 200 minutes together this year, 3.7 expected goals for. That's a huge shot generation rate, or expected goal generation rate, I should say. But they're only shooting 5%. That's kind of a problem. You got to imagine that's going to turn around eventually. I'm not sure if I'd want to bet on that happening against Igor Shesterkin, but he hasn't really been his normal self through the early portions of the season. So I don't mind if you want to one-off Ovechkin. Certainly, you can always pair him with Evgeny Kuznetsov for that power play exposure. But the problem here is Washington's going to be without John Carlson. They said he could be out a little while. Not only is he pretty important to that top power play unit, but he's by far their best driver of offense at 5-on-5 from the blue line. So I'm not sure how high I am on stacking any of the Caps lines. Like, I think Kuznetsov is a fine one-off. I think you can one-off Alex Ovechkin. I just don't know if I'm going to be stacking anything, especially with Carlson out of the lineup.
Yeah, big downgrade for the Caps defenseman and their power play. Gustafson's 4K, so if you wanted to go Washington 1 plus Gustafson, like, it's actually not too expensive tonight. Or, you can go with Kuznetsov instead of Sheary. That's fine as well. That's really the only way I'll be targeting the Caps here. Like the Rangers, Rangers 1 and Rangers 2, both pretty much right next to each other in the top stacks as far as chance of being a top 2 play, and ownership, pretty even ownership between the two, both between 4 and 5%. So I don't mind either one of them. I'm probably going with that Rangers 1 line on the lineup builder there. Kravtsov, I'm not sure how many minutes he's going to play. I projected him for, I think, like 12 or 13. That might be a little ambitious. I mean, he could be benched after a couple shifts here if the Rangers go down early. So that's one concern that I've seen being talked about in the Discord. But we're playing for high, like, upside performances. So if you want to go full New York Rangers 1, I will be doing some of that for sure. I'll also be doing like Zibanejad, Panarin, and Kreider, Zibanejad, Panarin, and Trocheck, or going with line 2 as kind of your anchor. Go Trocheck, Kreider with Zibanejad or Panarin. I think there's a lot of fun ways you can stack up this Rangers team. Pretty good implied total at home against a team that is struggling with some injuries right now in the Caps. So definitely the Rangers side for me. Anyone else you want to mention here?
Not a lot. One thing I did want to mention on the blue line was Jacob Trouba. He's been playing more minutes of late. That was a problem of his maybe like a month ago, was that he was starting to play 18, 19 minutes a game. And a guy that relies on peripherals like him, you need more than 18 and 19 minutes from him for that price. But it's been up around 22 minutes a game on average over the last couple of weeks. So I actually don't mind Trouba here tonight. I think he's actually carrying a higher projection than Adam Fox for us over on DraftKings, despite Fox having that top power play status. So don't mind Trouba if you want to, need a guy in that 5K-ish range on DraftKings. Obviously, Eric Gustafsson is a pretty good play on the Washington side with John Carlson out. I think he was playing 22, 24 minutes at times back in November when Carlson was injured the last time. So that seems a reasonable guess of what he's going to see here tonight.
Cool. Let's move it on to the Hawks and the Hurricanes. We got a 2.1 implied total for the Hawks, 3.9 for the Hurricanes. The most lopsided game of the night. We've got Mrazek starting for the Hawks, Kochekov for the Hurricanes. Aho is in his second game back, so he skated with Teravainen and Jarvis last game. Stastny stayed up with Svechnikov and Martin Necas. Nothing for me here on the Hawks, so I'll get that out of the way. This is a Canes game, huge total. I think highest total on the slate. Is there anything you want on the Hawks?
I was hoping you'd say something like that. There's no reason to talk about them.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So I guess the question is, which Hurricanes line do you prefer?
Yeah, what I'll start with is the Teravainen, Aho, Jarvis line, because I did write about Jarvis again in that picks article. I'll bring it up on the site or on your screen here real quick. He's fairly expensive on FanDuel, but he's priced down quite a bit on DraftKings at 3,200. What I wrote was how important it was for Sebastian Aho to be Jarvis's center. If you look at what Jarvis has done over the last 2 years, 2.9 points per 60 minutes of 5-on-5 with Aho as a center. Like, that's really good production, like elite level production. Without him, it's 1.2 points per 60 minutes. So, that's what, a 60% decline in production. It's massive. So I don't really hate either of the top Carolina lines. Something's drawing me to Teravainen, Aho, and Jarvis in this one. The problem being Aho is the only one projected to be on the top power play unit. And this is a great, great power play spot for Carolina. Chicago's had one of the worst penalty kills all season. It's gotten worse as the season has gone on. So I think you probably want to get some guys on the top power play unit here. So I think you can even do something like you just mentioned with the Rangers and do like Svechnikov, Necas, Aho. Or you can do like Aho, Jarvis, and Svechnikov if you want to save some money on one of the wingers or something like that. I think that's kind of the approach I would take here tonight. There's probably going to be spread out ownership across 3 different Carolina lines, which hopefully keeps the ownership reasonable. But I do kind of like that Aho Jarvis 2-man at the very least, but I think you want to get some more pieces of the top power play, and considering how good of a power play spot it is for Carolina. So I think there are definitely 3 lines in play, kind of like the Rangers, and I think you can do you can stack across even strength lines as you would with the Rangers, and it's a tremendous spot for Carolina against the Chicago team in town. So I'll go Teravainen, Aho, and Jarvis, but like I said, I think there are definitely 3 lines you can use here.
Yeah, I am in total agreement there. I will be targeting the Hawks in a lot of lineups tonight, targeting against the Hawks, I should say, not playing them. I think I don't X out a lot of teams. I think the Hawks are just going to get the old X for me. At least the Kane, Domi, I guess that's fine as a 2-man, but I do a lot of 3-3s on bigger slates anyway, so there's not really a reason for me to play them in arguably the worst spot from a possession standpoint that you could go against in the league. I agree with you on Carolina too. I think we're showing a little bit lower ownership for Carolina 1, the Stastny line, maybe because people don't want to play Stastny, but you can get a little different with your combo, at least the 3 forwards, if you go with what you mentioned, Aho, Svechnikov, and Netchus, and just load up on that top power play. You can add in Burns if you want for 6,500. All these guys pretty reasonably priced in what should be an ass kicking here for the Hurricanes. Anything else?
No, not. I mean, Brent Burns obviously is a pretty good play on the blue line, considering how good of a power play spot it is. I'll also mention Brett Pesce. I mean, obviously he won't get as much power play time, but that second unit for Carolina isn't bad, and it is a very good power play spot overall for the Hurricanes. So I don't mind him. Connor Murphy's kind of intriguing to me on the Chicago side, but I'm not sure you get much more out of him than blocks. Like, hopefully you get a block bonus and maybe you can get a couple of shots or something. Don't mind Connor Murphy sub 3K on DraftKings, but that's honestly it for me from the Chicago side.
I thought I saw Connor Murphy's price at one point in like the mid 4s.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, I'm scrolling through. Click on player card on Fantasy.
If I'm not mistaken, there was a time where this Chicago Blackhawks roster had 4 defensemen priced 4K or more on DraftKings. All of Jones, Murphy, McCabe, and Jack Johnson, I think, got up there at one point when he was blocking a lot of shots. So it's all bad.
Yeah, it's tough. Things change quick in this league. The Hawks are a total joke. Before we get to our next game, we have a super chat from KJ. He says, "No mint chocolate chip soakers, please." Thoughts, mint chocolate chip guy? I think he's starting with ice cream, but I can't be too sure there.
Yeah, not a big mint chocolate chip guy. I'm a big maple pecan guy. I think that's the direction I go when I have the choice for my ice cream.
That's respectable. I'm a Moose Tracks guy. Moose Tracks, maybe Neapolitan. I don't know. Just anything but regular vanilla. And definitely no mint chocolate chip for me. No. That is a hard no. Penguins, Islanders, 3.1 implied total for the Penguins, 2.8 for the Islanders. Tristan Jarry and Ilya Sorokin, your expected starters. Actually, Jarry's confirmed on our lineup builder. This is a game that I actually like. Shocker, one of the lowest totals on the slate, and I'm just ready to load it up. We're showing some ownership on the second line for the Islanders, the Nelson Lee-Beauvillier, although they have terrible numbers as a line so far this season. Same with Islanders 1, Bailey, Barzell, and Wahlstrom. So I'm going to the Pittsburgh side, or maybe Islanders 3, but I want to hear you kind of talk through this one.
Yeah, it's an interesting trick that the Islanders are doing here. They're allowing a lot of shots and a lot of expected goals against, but they have Ilya Sorokin to kind of save them, which is honestly not a bad play. It allows you to focus on your offense a little bit more. And, that second line definitely hasn't been good by expected goal share this year, but they're still generating quite a bit of offense, right? 2.9 expected goals for per 60 minutes. That's over 10% higher than the league average. And they're scoring 4 actual goals per 60 minutes. So a very reasonable offensive performance from them. The problem is the Pittsburgh top 6 is fairly good defensively. So it's kind of a tough matchup in that sense where, the top line's been league average defensively this year. The second line for Pittsburgh has been much better than league average. Goaltending has let them down a little bit, but that happens. So I don't think it's necessarily a bad spot for that Islanders second line. It's just that Pittsburgh has had a pretty good penalty kill. And the Penguins don't take a ton of penalties. Like, they're below league average in that regard. So it kind of takes a little bit of value away from that perfectly correlated second line from the Islanders. But I think they're acceptable to use here today. They're not coming in with super heavy ownership. They are at 7.5%. That's kind of high for an 11-game slate, but it's nothing that I think is backbreaking. It's the Pittsburgh side that is very interesting here. As you mentioned, that Pittsburgh top line has been dominant this year, 3.7 expected goals for per 60 minutes. And the big difference is Rickard Rakell being on the power play, right? It's something we mentioned in one of the shows before the holiday break. Their shot attempts are up 22% since Rickard Rakell jumped to the top power play unit. Obviously, their goals have climbed a lot. that is, I mean, it's not like this is a good power play spot regardless. The Islanders take even fewer penalties than the Penguins, and you're still dealing with Ilya Sorokin. But, Pittsburgh one's perfectly correlated, playing well both at 5-on-5 and on the power play. Sorokin has definitely had some bad games, over the last month or so, going back to the middle of November, 5 goals against Nashville, 5 goals against St. Louis, 5 goals against Arizona, 4 against the Rangers. Like, teams have been getting to him. It's just, it wouldn't surprise me if we see like a 39 save shutout or something out of him tonight. But I think this is a good spot for Pittsburgh one, considering the pretty low ownership we're showing in our top stacks.
Yeah, I like Pittsburgh one. I like Pittsburgh two a lot. I'm a little disappointed to see their ownership. Like, that's, for a secondary stack here, I'm trying to do the quick math on how much they actually cost. But anyways, they're kind of that mid-tier for like line pricing. They look to be one of the more popular options along with Islanders too. So I think I'd much rather, if you factor in ownership, I think I'd much rather have Pittsburgh two if I'm hand building a lineup. And then Pittsburgh one at low ownership. The total's still over 3. I think like these guys could get the shot bonuses, and then maybe you only need like 2 goals if they're heavily assisted by the other guys. If it's more of a low scoring slate, you might be able to get there even if Sorokin doesn't have a really bad performance. But as you mentioned, like, he's had a few that could be GPP winning performances for the other team. So I really like Pittsburgh here. If the Islanders second line stays at that ownership, I just kind of have a problem playing lines that have been bad at 5-on-5 on big slates that are popular. So I might end up giving them the X if I'm feeling myself a little bit when I see my exposures, because I know they're going to come up a lot for me unless I limit them. Just because I'm using the projections on the site, and then hopefully the ownership kind of lowers them, because I don't want a lot of Islanders too. Any like Islanders 3, Pittsburgh 3. Do you include third lines? We haven't talked about like general strategy for a while. You ever play third lines on big slates?
On slates this big, not every third line, but there will be some third lines. Like the kid line from the Rangers would be one that I would consider. That Carolina third line we just talked about. The Flames later on this slate, I think, have 3 playable lines as well. Depending what the Kings do with their lines, they might have 3 tonight, but there's some players that are injured and coming in and out of the lineup, so that could be a little bit shaky. There are some third lines I would consider. I don't think the Penguins would be one of them. The Islanders, I think it's playable, especially where Parise has actually been playing fairly well this year. But it's not one of those things where I'm like, oh, I have to play a third line that's coming in at 0.7% tonight or something like that. I think there are enough options and ways to stack when you have 22 teams on the slate that it's not – you don't have to concern yourself with all of them, but there are definitely a few that you should always be keeping in mind whenever they're on a slate, no matter how many or how few games there are.
Yeah, I mean, I used to include every third line and just kind of run it, and if they projected okay, I would allow them to be in my lineups. But now I've crossed off like these joker lines that they might have 2 guys that play like 10 and 9 minutes and stuff. So even if they're line 3 on the lineup sites, it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to play more than like 10, 12 minutes. So, just wanted to get your take there. I think I might have some Pittsburgh 3. I don't know if I'm going to include Islanders 3, but Parise and Pageau have been pretty good together this season, which is very surprising after how poor Parise's looked for a number of years. Let's go to the Leafs and the Blues. We've got a couple more games that we're going to talk about BetMGM, and then close out the rest of the slate. 3.3 implied total for the Leafs, 2.6 for the Blues. Ilya Samsonov and Jordan Binnington are your projected starters here. So I saw Kyrou got added as we started the show to the lineup builder with O'Reilly and Saad as the quote-unquote top line. Buchnevich, Thomas, and Tarasenko on line 2. Shen moves down to line 3 with Barushev and Achari. I don't know if we got confirmation on those lines. I don't think it's going to be a Blues night for me anyways, but maybe you could talk me into some Blues. What do you think of these new combos we're seeing here?
Yeah, that's the one thing I wanted to mention right off the top is Kyrou didn't skate with the 5-on-5 lines at morning skate. He just practiced with the power plays. He said he's in. The team said he's a game time decision. I'm assuming if he says he's in, then he's going to play. But when the teams had, and this would be pretty much a full complement of their forwards, when they've had a full complement of their forwards, quite often they've spread it across 3 lines. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if we see like the normal line 2 that we have showing Buchnevich, Thomas Tarasenko, and then Sad O'Reilly and Josh Levo with Shannon Kyrou on the third line. Shannon Kyrou have played on the third line quite a bit this year when the lineup's been healthy enough for them to do it. And that's what's kind of worrying me here, is that we're going to see absolutely nuked lines when warm-ups. I think Buchnevich, Thomas, and Tarasenko stay together regardless. But it's a matter of whether Shen and Kyrou are on the third line together, or Kyrou's on the top line, and then Shen, he's just playing with a bunch of guys. If Shen and Kyrou are down on the third line, like, that's a third line duo I would have a little bit of interest in, and that we played this year. That would be another third line that I would consider. We don't know what the lineup's going to look like until warm-ups hit, and that's a little bit of a concern. The St. Louis second line, like, I think regardless, is in play. They do have good offensive numbers this year. 150 minutes together, 3.1 expected goals for, 4.5 actual goals for. Buchnevich is a big difference maker on that line. When he's been out, they've looked awful. When he's been in, at least they've looked playable. It's just really not that great of a matchup against Toronto. Toronto, doesn't take a lot of penalties. Neither do the Blues. I think they're still the least penalized team in the league. But the Toronto penalty kill is not that bad either. So, where St. Louis too is coming in, with relatively low ownership. We have them 3 to 4% on DraftKings per the Top Stacks tool. It's not like they're not playable. I think they are. It's just, at that price range, we mentioned the Rangers top line earlier this slate. You mentioned the Pittsburgh second line in the last game. They're all around the same price, and I think those are lines that I would rather play than the St. Louis second line. But I think St. Louis too is in play for people needing, looking for a mid-price line. But that would be kind of it for me in this matchup. On the Toronto side, I did mention William Nylander. I mean, that Toronto top line since Nylander got there has just been absolutely unbelievable. 4 expected goals for per 60 minutes, 5.1 actual goals. Nylander has 44 shots in 9 games in December, averaging almost 5 shots per game. Just been absolutely lethal. The little problem is St. Louis doesn't take a lot of penalties. Like I said, 2.4 per game. The league average, I think, is might be down to 3.2 now. It was 3.3 a couple weeks ago. And the St. Louis penalty kill has been getting a little bit better as the season's gone on. Certainly not good by any stretch, but better. And if you're average and you're only taking 2 to 3 penalties a game, you're really not going to give up a lot of power play goals against. And we don't really know how good that 5-man, 5-forward top power play unit for the Leafs is going to be. So of all the lines, I would go to Toronto 1 just because I want full correlation in case they somehow get 3 or 4 power plays here. And the Blues penalty kill looks like it did for pretty much most of the season so far. But I think that's it for me from the Toronto side. If I'm not playing Toronto 1, I don't know if I'm stacking anywhere else. So I like Toronto 1 the best in this matchup. They're coming in with pretty good leverage as well. I mean, their top 2 stack percentage leads the slate. That's something that we have to mention here. They are expensive. They are on the road, but their top 2 percentage leads the slate on DraftKings, second over on FanDuel. I do like Toronto 1, maybe a little bit of St. Louis 2, but I'm worried about those St. Louis lines.
Yeah, I can get behind some St. Louis too. So you talked me to them. I think it's a good chance they stay together. So I'd be fine playing them at low ownership in a spot at home where they get to go up against or they get to dictate the matchups here. And then Toronto 1, yeah. Surprisingly, maybe not surprisingly, it's Austin Matthews. Highest top 2 stack percentage, as you mentioned, with only 7% ownership. So they're actually our highest. They have a most positive leverage of anyone on the slate right now. So ownership is really spread out tonight. There's not like one chalk spot. This is one of the chalkier spots, but you still have a much higher chance of being a top 2 stack. And you can go Matthews, Nylander, Marner, Matthews, Nylander, Tavares, broken power play stack. That gets pretty pricey, but I think it's worth trying it out in a spot where they're going to be pretty low owned compared to some other 11, 12, 15 game slates where we've seen them be chalk at 20%. So I like Toronto 1 a lot. They might end up being my highest owned stack tonight. Let's go to Dallas and Nashville. We got a 3.1 implied total for the Stars, 2.8 for the Preds. Jake Ottinger and UC Saros expected to go here. We've got Novak, Granlund, Forsberg for the Preds top line, Glass, Niederreiter, Tanner Jeannot, and then the third line, quote unquote, third line, Johansson, Duchesne, and Yakov Trenin. You like anything on the Nashville side, or is this another Dallas one night?
I mean, not really. I preferred when Johansson and Niederreiter were playing together. They are actually playing reasonably well. As Josh and I mentioned in a couple of the shows before the holiday break, any line with Michael Granlund on is just getting dragged down, particularly defensively. The Nashville top line without Matt Duchesne, 3.8 expected goals against, I think around a 43% expected goal share. They're just being saved by, great goaltending behind them, which is kind of a problem. Like, you don't want to keep relying on great goaltending night in and night out. We've seen, like we just talked about, what happened with Sorokin. So with these lines from the Preds, there's not a whole lot that I'm super excited about playing. And I don't even think that the lines are going to stay together that long. That's something that's always a worry with this Nashville team. They do have a penchant for breaking up lines fairly quickly. And, we've seen inconsistent ice time. Like, Matt Duchene's been as low as 12 minutes and as high as 20 minutes in the last 5. So I won't say no. I'll never say no to one-offing Matt Duchesne or one-offing Philip Forsberg or something like that. It's just a 3-man even strength stacking. I don't think there's much on the Nashville side that's really appealing to me. The Dallas side is a little bit interesting because they're the line that's either first or second by top stacks, top 2 probability here tonight. It's them and Toronto 1, neck and neck with each other, which, if they get that Forsberg-Granlund matchup, Dallas's top line's more than good enough to just run them over all game long. And then, it's up to Saros to kind of hold the fort down. The Nashville penalty kill still, not very good. Might even say bad. And that Dallas top power play, while not scoring the way they were in the first month of the season, is still scoring at a pretty high rate and is still very, very good. So I think I do like the Dallas top line here. The only thing that concerns me is minutes, right? We have seen some minutes problems with them this season. Not so much of late. They've been, generally 17 to 20 minutes when you go down from Pavelski and up to Robertson. But there have been games where we've seen them play 15, 16 minutes and stuff like that. It's like, do I want to pay over 20K for a line that, maybe Robertson plays 18, Hintz 17, and Pavelski 15. And Joe Pavelski's only put up 20 shots in his last 10 games. So that's a little bit of a concern for me as well. But I really do like the spot for Dallas 1. I think Nashville, I said it before the season, I thought they were an overrated team. I think they're showing just how bad they actually are. They're just getting saved by Saros at times. So I think Dallas 1. Dallas 2 is kind of an interesting stack. They've looked good in limited minutes together, carrying, about 62% of the expected goal share, I believe. The problem has been shooting percentage. Mason Marchment shooting under 6% in his last 15 games. Jamie Benn not shooting a ton as much anymore. But I don't mind, that Dallas Ben Marchment Wyatt Johnston line. I don't know if I'd 3-man stack them, but I definitely don't mind like a 2-man of Ben Marchment or Ben Johnston or something like that.
All right, I thought you were talking Kiviranta, Sagan, Delaney.
No, sorry, I should have clarified. Yeah,
I raised my eyebrows a little bit, but yeah, you're talking Ben Johnston and Marchment. That makes sense, and I am in agreement there. As with your point on Dallas 1, it is like there's always a risk that the minutes maybe aren't going to be there, but that's the kind of line that could put up 2 or 3 goals in a 5-minute span. So they could do it even in limited minutes. Any favorite non-Roman Josi defenseman in this game?
I mean, Alex Carrier still playing well over 20 minutes, even after Ryan McDonough came back. So if you need like a full punt, min-price punt on DraftKings, I think Alex Carrier is still in play. Esa Lindell is always a guy that appeals to me on the Dallas side. I just worry about shot volume and him actually seeing enough shots to get to that block bonus on DraftKings. So I think other than Yossi, I think Carrier might be my next favorite defenseman in this one.
Carrier, the second highest value in the projections on the site. He's projected for 6.68 DraftKings points at $2,500. So I think you could do a lot worse than him at min salary. So I like the call there. Although I'm not going to like the call on the highest rated value defenseman tonight. And that is our old friend Tyler Myers, who we'll get to later, or we won't. Probably not. BetMGM is the sponsor for today's show, as it has been pretty much all season. We want you guys to take advantage of an offer that honestly just won't be around for that long. So right now, this offer is going to be going down to 1 month at some point, but right now you can get 2 free months of Stokastic Plus Platinum, which is a $240 value and up to a $1,000 risk-free bet when you sign up, you make a deposit, and make your first paid wager at BetMGM. If your bet loses, you're going to get site credit back. You're going to get free bets. All you got to do is create a Stokastic membership using the form in the description. So you got to use the form in the description. You click on the BetMGM button that appears after registering and logging in, and then it walks you through what you have to do. So you just have to deposit $10, make your first paid bet. One bet that I like on underdog tonight is the Oilers plus 125, although that's what they were like an hour ago. Maybe that's moved. Probably moved against me because I'm a horrible bettor. But plus 125 in Calgary tonight. I like them as a dog. I also mentioned Brad Marchand over 2.5 shots on goal for plus money on BetMGM. Those are the 2 bets that I would go with. Or you can pick your own when you sign up and get your 2 free months of Stokastic Plus. Once the bet goes through and BetMGM sees that you place the bet and followed all the directions, which they're not very hard to follow, you're going to get your 2 free months. And then you can hang out with us in Discord, use all the tools we've talked about, use the lineup builder, top stacks, everything that we've referenced so far today. So make sure you do that. If you have any questions, feel free to DM me, and I can clear anything up for you guys. Let's go to the second half of the games. Minnesota and Winnipeg. You like this one, which I wasn't expecting, but 3 implied total for the Wild, 2.9 for the Jets. Marc-Andre Fleury expected to go for the Wild. Hellebuck, as always, for the Jets. A stacked top line here for the Winnipeg Jets. Kyle Connor, Pierre-Luc Dubois, and Mark Scheifele. I think Scheifele's playing wing tonight, or at least to start with. But you were saying in Discord earlier that he's probably going to split face-off duties with Pierre-Luc Dubois. You like this Winnipeg one line, huh?
Yeah, I do. I'll go through my reasoning real quick. Part of it is, if you look at the offensive numbers for Kyle Connor, Mark Scheifele this season, they don't look like super elite. 2.8 expected goals for, 2.6 against, without Nikolai Ehlers on their wing, shooting only 6%. Kyle Connor went through a pretty big goal drought. Not a drought entirely, but he was only shooting like 4 or 5% through the first month of the season. It was the move to Pierre-Luc Dubois on his wing that kind of rejuvenated his season and got that goal scoring back, to that 40 goal-ish level that we know Kyle Connor's capable of. So now you're putting those 2 back with Mark Scheifele. Like, Mark Scheifele's still a tremendous playmaker. Obviously can score goals. Got me my hat trick pick there a few weeks ago. So obviously, I think that they're going to be a good line once they're together, and they are going to have to play heavy minutes here tonight, right? Like, they have Blake Wheeler out, Cole Perfidi out, Nikolai Ehlers still out. Those are 3 of their top 4 wingers, and this isn't a team that's deep enough on the wing, maybe like Carolina or something like that to make up for that. So I think there's a pretty good chance they play really, really heavy minutes here tonight. Minnesota's on the road. They had to travel this morning. That Minnesota top line hasn't been like super elite defensively or anything. 2.4 expected goals against per 60 minutes. If Winnipeg does decide to go with that matchup, we're not sure how that's going to work out with, so many guys injured. But even if they have to go up against that Hartman, Gaudreau, Boldy line, like, that's not a line I'd be overly concerned about from a defensive perspective. And we're not showing all that much ownership on the Winnipeg top line, coming in at about 5%. I will bring it up. I'll bring it up on the lineup builder real quick. You can see the total stack projection there, 36.9 points. That's higher than Minnesota's, and it's higher than the Boston top line, and it's higher, than Aaron and Carolina line. It's higher than the Pittsburgh top line. Like, this is a line that's projected for quite a bit points, because if Winnipeg gets, let's say Winnipeg scores 4 here tonight, they're probably going to be concentrated on that top line, because that's where all their good offensive players are playing. So, considering the good leverage, reasonable enough pricing, just in that 20K range, I do like Winnipeg's top line here tonight. On the Minnesota side, what concerns me here is twofold. One, Winnipeg doesn't take a lot of penalties, only 2.8 per game. That's a half a power play less per game than the league average. And the penalty kill has generally been great all season long. And it's not like, Cole Perfidi and Blake Wheeler are integral penalty killers for this team. So they still have, the penalty kill guys intact. So I don't mind playing, anything on the Minnesota side. I probably stick to Kaprizov, Steele, and Zuccarello, just because of the minutes they play, because they have been playing very, very well at 5-on-5 since Steele got there. I just think I'd prefer to go with the home team with the Winnipeg top line in this one. I think both top lines very much in play, but I think it's a little bit of a better power play spot, honestly, for Winnipeg than it is for Minnesota. And I want to go with the better power play spot at home.
I will say I agree, I think, with pretty much everything you said about the top two lines being the priorities here. You're talking me into some Winnipeg, which is usually a bad thing if you're going to play Winnipeg for that night. I feel like I never get them right. I feel like no one ever gets them right.
I mean, that's why the flow chart was created, and it's not a cupcake matchup.
It's not a cupcake matchup. So that means they should perform pretty well here, according to the flow chart rules. I will say $5,900 Matt Boldy. Like, this is a price a week ago I probably wouldn't have played him for, but I think he's played 17 and 18 minutes in his last 2, and he's got like a ridiculous shot attempt rate, top power play time. I like him as a one-off if you are building lineups with one-offs in them. Full stack, I don't love it, but I'll probably end up on some Minnesota 2, Winnipeg 1. That's really the only thing on the Winnipeg side for me. I don't think there's anything special to talk about on the defenseman, unless I'm missing something here, Cliffy.
Well, Jake Middleton's not going to be playing tonight, so I'm wondering, if we don't see some more minutes for Brodin or Spurgeon or something like that, because they had really been playing heavy minutes of late, like around 21 minutes a game, which isn't very much. So maybe we see some more from them, but I'm not running out to go slam in a bunch of Jonas Brodin and hoping he plays 24 minutes here tonight. That's not the way I'm looking at it.
Edmonton Oilers and the Calgary Flames. You got a 3 implied total for the Oilers, 3.5 for the Flames. Stu Skinner, Jacob Markstrom, your expected goalies here. Oilers, we got news on them before the show. It was the lines that they skated with to start last game. So Hyman, McDavid, Puljujarvi, Draisaitl, and Nugent Hopkins separated from McDavid. So that's really all you need to know on the Edmonton side. Like, seriously, for me, it's just McDavid, and then I make rules for the rest of the wingers. Basically, you have to play McDavid if you play this winger. And I would include Draisaitl and Nugent Hopkins in that, although I don't really want to do a McDavid, Draisaitl, Nugent Hopkins 3-man stack, because none of them are at least starting the game at 5-on-5 together. And it gets pretty expensive there. What about the Flames side? Is there anything you love here?
I don't think I love anything on the Flames ever. But I did write up Nazem Kadri in the picks article today, mainly because it is a pretty good power play spot for the Flames. If there's been one area the Flames haven't consistently struggled this year, it is the power play. It has been anywhere from good to very good, basically right from the start of the season. Huberdeau skating with Kadri at 5-on-5, so they'll both be on the top power play unit together. Kadri's on pace, just to shatter his career high in power play goals. He has been integral to the Calgary power play, much like he was to Colorado's last year, even when they were going through injuries last year. Kadri's still putting up a pretty good shot rate as well. So I don't mind that Calgary second line. I know Lucic is there. He's not, you don't have to play him a lot, Lucic, even though he's 2,500. You can play him. It's fine. But it's the power play guys that I really want to focus on, because Edmonton's had a bottom 6, bottom 7 penalty kill basically the entire season, and they're the 6th most penalized team in the league. So it is a good power play spot for the Flames. Dubé, Lindholm, and Toffoli, perfectly acceptable to play. I wouldn't say that there's any matchup concerns on the Oilers side, but I want to get the guy that's, scoring power play goals. That is the focal point of the power play. It is Kadri. So Kadri, Huberdeau, throw in Lucic if you want. On the Edmonton side, I think whatever you do, it has to be some sort of power play stack. Whether you just put McDavid and Draisaitl as your 2 Edmonton players and then move along. But Calgary is the 2nd most penalized team in the league. The penalty kill has generally been very good this year, but the Edmonton power play is one that can certainly shred any team. So, get the Edmonton power play guys if you want. It is a good power play. They should have a lot of power play opportunities. But it's, Calgary. I think Calgary has 3 playable lines here. It's just I'm focusing on Huberdeau, where his power play production has actually been good this year on a per minute basis. And like I said, Kadri's just been shooting the lights out on the power play himself. So those are the guys that I'm focusing on.
Yeah, it's similar to what we've talked about with the Rangers and the Hurricanes. We got a bunch of playable lines on the home team, but the power plays are kind of all broken up. It's not concentrated to one even strength line. So going with Lindholm, Toffoli, Kadri, Huberdeau, either Lindholm or Toffoli, I think both great options. And then getting a little bit of ownership on Calgary 3. But yeah, I mean, they don't have a great chance of being a top 2 stack, but you don't need them to be a top 2 stack when they're priced this way. So 3% ownership is perfectly acceptable for me here for my GPP lineups. Let's go to the Avs and the Coyotes. 3.2 implied total for the Avs, 2.3 for the Yotes. Georgiev is who we have penciled in for the Avs. Connor Ingram, surprisingly, starting for the Yotes. So, I think a lot of people, including myself, had Vejmelka in their heads, at least for guys that we wanted to play as one-off goalies, even if you don't like the Yotes. Now, how big of a downgrade is it from Vejmelka to Ingram, in your opinion?
Well, I'll just give you Evolving Hockey's opinion. By their goals saved above expected, the difference is about 19 goals in 33 games, which is a chasm of a difference. Connor Ingram giving up about a half goal extra per game than an average goalie would be, facing the same shot quality, which is obviously very bad. Almost 5 goals saved, negative 5 goals saved above expected in his 9 games this year. He hasn't been good. I don't think it's that big of a surprise, but I do wonder if it drives more ownership to Colorado, or if people pay attention to goaltenders that closely and care that much. Because this is all of a sudden a really, really good spot for the Colorado top line. Not that Arizona's ever a team you avoid, but when Vejmelka's in net, it's at least a little bit of a question. With Ingram there now, not as much of a question. The Colorado top line, now they're one of the cheaper top lines on the slate, like of the expensive top lines. Like they're 19,500 on DraftKings, which is over $1,000 cheaper than the Winnipeg line we just talked about. So they will carry some more ownership. But Arizona is the most penalized team in the league. The penalty kill has been declining. Colorado's power play hasn't been scoring without McKinnon, but a lot of that is shooting percentage driven, shooting 6%. Power plays don't shoot 6% for extended periods of time, let's say. So there is some positive regression to come through there. I do like that Colorado top line. I just think, I might pay up an extra $1,000 to go play Winnipeg or to go play Pittsburgh, or an extra few $100s to go play Minnesota or something like that. But perfectly in play here. And of course, don't forget our old buddy, Evan Rodriguez. He's on the top power play unit. He's hovering around 3 shots per game, I think a little bit less. Played 23 minutes when in the last game after Nichushkin got hurt, moving up to the top power play. If you're worried about ownership for any reason, he's a guy you could slide in, take off Comfort, put in Evan Rodriguez, something like that. There's just, even if the Colorado depth isn't that great with all their injuries, Arizona's depth isn't either. So it's the Colorado side for me. I don't think I'll be getting to anything on Arizona here. It would be the top line or nothing with Matias Maccelli out. There's just not a lot that I would want to go into the depth, especially with Keller and Schmaltz moving to the top power play unit. So if anything for me from Arizona, it would be the top line, but I think they're coming in a little bit overowned. So I'll just lean Colorado here.
Definitely agree on Colorado there. I'm glad you mentioned Erod. I like him a lot at 4,700. Probably going to play around 20 minutes, maybe more.
Yeah.
Cale Makar, 7,500. He's the priority for sure, but you also have Taze there for 4,700. And then if EJ is going to play with Gerard, he's probably due for about 20 minutes. He's a guy with pretty good peripherals, $3,400 there at 1.1% ownership is what we have him at right now. Let's go to San Jose and Vancouver. 3.1 implied total for the Sharks, 3.5 for the Canucks. Reimer and Spencer Martin expected to go here. We're not showing Tomas Hertl in the lineup builder just yet, but he is expected to be back in. What are the lines that you're expecting to see for the Sharks?
I think we're going to see Meyer, Hertl, LeBanc, and then Nieto, Couture, Barabanov. Okay. But it's Hertl and Meyer that are the focuses. Obviously, those guys have been very good on the top line with LeBanc. 3.1 expected goals for per 60 minutes. That's and carrying 59% of the expected goal share. 3.8 actual goals. Meyer's been consistently playing 20 plus minutes of late, or around 20 minutes anyway. The Vancouver penalty kill, kind of a little bit of a slide again of late. A lot of it is goaltending related. I think they have the lowest save percentage on the penalty kill this year of any goaltending tandem, duo, trio, whatever you want, by 40 points. They have just been absolutely abysmal. Not that Vancouver takes a ton of penalties, but I think it's a good power play spot for Meyer and Hertl. And if people go off by lineup sites to make their lineups and things like that, and they don't see Hertl in, maybe Hertl comes in a little bit lower owned than he might otherwise be, because Couture is only 5% right now. As the top line center, if Hertl's there, I think there's a reasonable chance he comes in less than 5%. So don't mind Meyer and Hertl. Throw in the bank if you want. He's reasonably priced, but don't mind Meyer and Hertl, especially as a duo here. On the Vancouver side, do we go back to your boys? Do we go back to Kuzmenko, Pettersson, and Peterson?
You're the Lane Peterson whisperer, so I'll let you tell me.
I mean, Mikheyev and Besser haven't really been having good seasons. Besser's had absolutely terrible defensive impacts by expected goals so far this year. Mikheyev has not had a good season in his own right. Doesn't matter what line he's playing on. And Horvat is fairly expensive for what's not really a great power play spot for Vancouver. I think I would go back to Kuzmenko, Pettersson, and Peterson, honestly, because, if you want to stack Horvat and Besser with Mikheyev and get 2 out of 3 on the top power play or something like that, I think that's fine. The San Jose penalty kill hasn't been as elite lately as it was earlier in the season, but they don't take a lot of penalties. It certainly hasn't been god awful by any stretch. And I don't like any of these Vancouver lines. Miller's got nobody to play with on that second line, especially with the way Garland's been playing this year. As I mentioned, Horvat and Besser haven't really been that good this year either. It's been Pettersson and Kuzmenko that have looked great regardless of who's on their wing. So it's Kuzmenko, Pettersson, and Peterson that I would go back to.
I like the call. Yeah, that was the line that I had written down on the Vancouver side, just because I didn't know what the lines were going to be, but they ended up being what I had from last game when I was looking through on Natural Stat Trick. I think the Vancouver 1 line in the lineup builder is okay. But yeah, you mentioned JT Miller's line mates are kind of an issue. So power plays all spread around. I think I'm going back to some Vancouver 3 against the San Jose depth. And then agree with you on Hertl and Meyer, assuming they play together, which I think they will be. I'm not sure why the sites aren't updating with Hertl back. So maybe someone snoozing over there, but that should get fixed at some point. Otherwise, I'll manually fix it in the projections here. Tyler Myers, I mentioned him earlier. He's the highest value defenseman on the slate tonight because he's $2,500. He's going to play probably 20 plus minutes. He's the guy that I would limit if I was getting a lot of him. So I wouldn't go crazy on Myers. He's just a guy that last guy in, he's in the rotation with guys like Alex Carrier and some other mid-salary guys. Anything else there?
I'll just mention Ferraro, 20 plus minutes since he's returned. As long as he stays under 3K, which he is, I don't mind playing him. But, considering the value on Myers and more minutes and the blocks that he puts up, I think I'd rather play Tyler Myers anyway.
All right, before we get to the last game, make sure you guys stick around. We're going to go a few minutes late here. There's no show after us until the NBA Deeper Dive, which is in like an hour and a half. So stick around. Cliffy and I are going to build a DraftKings lineup. I know a couple of you were asking about filler stacks for later, so maybe we can pick an expensive stack based off the top stacks tool, and then we're going to build a full lineup and see how we do here and see what your guys' input is. All right. Vegas Knights and the LA Kings, 3 implied total for the Knights, 3.1 for the Kings. Logan Thompson and Phoenix Copley, your expected goals, your expected goalies. Byfield back up for the Kings. I haven't seen anything on Marchessault on the Golden Knights. Have you heard anything?
I haven't seen anything either, and I've been looking as we've been on the air, and I still haven't seen anything.
Because he was a pretty late scratch, or not late scratch, but like an afternoon scratch the game before the break. So he could be back. That would change some things for the Knights, but I think that's still a line I want to attack. So I'm really liking LA1 here, Fiala, Kopitar, and Kempe, assuming they're going to see a decent amount of the Carlson, Smith, and either Kessel or Marsh. So either way, they're not going to be very strong defensively. What do you say about LA1 here, Cliffy?
Yeah, I think LA1 would be the line I would go to, especially with the way the Kings are starting to run their lines. Trevor Moore, they're saying, is going to be out tonight, and that'll move Victor Arvidsson back up to the second line. But it's with Alex Iafallo there. Moore has really been a big part of that line's ability to generate shots and keep the play in the offensive end. I'm not sure Iafallo can do the same thing. And, going down to that Kings third line, I assume Quentin Byfield will be there. They said he's going to be in the lineup. But how many minutes are they actually going to get? Like, will they play more than the fourth line is something I think that is honestly an open question. They probably would like him to, but if he doesn't perform up to snuff with Lizotte and Gabe Vilardi, then I could see them playing like 11 minutes or something like that. So, with my concerns about Kings 2 and certainly Kings 3, it would be the Los Angeles top line I would go to. I assume they're going to be playing some fairly heavy minutes here. Kevin Fiala has been going through a little bit of a spell of late. He's just shy of 4 shots per game over his last 9, but just only 1 goal. Shooting percentages are usually a problem with the Kings anyway. But like you said, especially if they're going to be going up against the second line without Marchessault there, that like putting Phil Kessel or whomever else is going to be a downgrade at both ends of the ice. And I think could make a nice matchup for LA1. So I do like the Kings top line here as well. Ownership's coming in just fine in that mid-price range. On the Vegas side, I did mention Mark Stone in the picks article. He's projecting very well for us, along with Chandler Stevenson and Mike Amadio on that top line. It would be a perfectly correlated top line. If Marchessault doesn't play, all 3 will be on the top power play. As I mentioned, Trevor Moore out for the Kings, so it takes a little bit of bite out of the matchup concerns at 5-on-5. And the Kings penalty kills still not very good, and they're above average by time shorthanded per game. So it's not a bad power play spot for Vegas here. So I think I do kind of like that Vegas top line in this game, assuming Marchessault isn't in the lineup. We're just going to have to wait and see. Hopefully we get some news before lock.
Yeah. Vegas 2, I think, would instantly become in play for me if Marchessault is in, but that's going to change the price of the line as well. I don't see Marchessault's price on my screen. I'm assuming he's somewhere in the 5s or maybe even in the 6s on DraftKings compared to Kessel, who is just 3,400 and probably only going to play like 12, 13 minutes.
Yeah, he's 6,700.
Yeah. Oh, wow. 67. Yeah. So double the price of Kessel, basically.
Yeah.
What about defensemen? Anyone you like?
I mean, Matt Roy's been playing a little bit more now that their defensemen are going through some trouble, but I think he's a little bit overpriced. So I think the guy I like most on a point per dollar basis might actually be Nick Hague. He's been playing reasonable minutes even when they've gotten Alex Pietrangelo back. I think Petro's certainly in play. Obviously, Doughty's in play. He's playing like 27 minutes a game or something like that. But I don't mind Hague as another one of those cheap options if you're looking for one tonight.
Egg, one of the top-rated value defensemen as well in the projections on the site. So I like the call there a lot. I use the projections for like these value defensemen, especially when I'm hand building, like we're going to do here in a second. Cliffy, do you want to pull up the top stacks tool for DraftKings? And I saw you had Toronto 1 penciled into the lineup builder.
Yes.
So maybe we can go with them as our stack that we want to start with. Matthews, Verlander, Bunting, 17.4% chance of being a top 2 stack, 7.1% ownership right now. These numbers are going to change a little bit. That creates 10.3% of leverage. You've also got Dallas 1 up there, Winnipeg 1 in similar price ranges if you guys wanted to do this on your own. But after that, like where would you be looking next if you're building a lineup like this? You know you want to play Toronto 1. Are you looking to correlate a defenseman if you're hand building? Or would you be looking for your secondary stack or secondary 2-man?
Sometimes I might look to correlate a defenseman, especially like if it was a Calgary stack, because I might do something like just play Huberdeau and Kadri and leave Lucic off. So in that case, I might slide in Rasmus Anderson into the stack. But with Toronto going to the 5-4 top power play unit and their defensemen getting pretty spread around minutes of late, like I'm not going to run out to correlate TJ Brody with the Toronto top line, right? Like you can do it, but I think there are other spots that I would look to. So I'd probably just stay here and look for one of those mid-priced lines that we talk about. I'll switch over to our top stacks tool real quick. Some of the mid-price lines that we talked about, obviously Calgary 2 was one that we mentioned, that Rangers top line, St. Louis second line if you want a game stack here, that Pittsburgh second line that you talked about. Certainly our Vancouver buddies are in play, and I think that might actually be a line that we could sneak in here if you wanted to.
Yeah, so Cliffy's going to try to put them in, or maybe we could put 2 of the 3 in if you want to leave off our boy Lane Peterson. I would never do such a thing, but some people might like to do that. You can put Peterson in or not. It doesn't matter. And then
we'll just put him in just to go with a simple 3-3 here to start with. Cool.
And then we're going to get to some of our goalie picks and hat trick picks right at the end here. So if you want to stick around for that, here are official calls here. After that, for me, I would be looking for a goalie or goalie or defenseman, obviously, because that's all we have left to fill out. But I'd probably be looking or thinking about what I wanted to do at goalie. Are you a correlation guy, or are you just playing the best goalie or the guy that's going to see the most volume?
I mean, where I often play single lineups, I'll have a list of like 4 or 5 goalies I want to play. And like, if one of the goalies I want to use is on that list and the price works, then I'll correlate. But it's not something where I'm like, oh, I have to correlate with one of my stacks no matter what. Like, that's just not the way I approach it. Especially where, we have 14.6 remaining, use a $7,600 goalie. You only have $3,500 left for each defenseman, right? So you don't want to pay all the way up for. Actually, is Samsonov even that expensive? Maybe you don't want to pay all the way up for an 8,100 Samsonov, right? Maybe you want to look for a little bit of a cheaper option.
Yeah, I mean, none of the goalies right now on the projections page right now are above a 1.8 value. So our highest value guy, 1.81, is Tristan Jarry. And then, you've got some options like Igor, 7,800, I think is a pretty good option. Home favorite and under 8K. Swayman, maybe going to see some volume, although I'd rather have that be Allmark. If we're going to go a little bit cheaper, maybe Phoenix Copley for 7,400. Or we could correlate with Spencer Martin. I mean, 3.1 implied total against although we don't have a projection in there for him, so that might error out the lineup builder. These will get updated right as the show gets finished. But I'm fine with going with whoever on our goalie here. whoever you want to click in, Cliffy.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go. I'm just going to go with Sorokin. He's one of the goalies that I was really targeting tonight anyway. And if we're not going to play Pittsburgh, if we're not going to stack Pittsburgh, I think using the goalie that's playing Pittsburgh might not be a bad idea.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
And then defense, we got 3,600 remaining. For me, this is where I go to the projections and I just sort. I take like one of the high value, low price guys, and then whatever probably the best projecting defenseman is afterwards. What do you think of that strategy? You think that's viable?
Yeah, no, that's what I would do. Like I would be going to go play a Nick Hague or an Aus Carrier or a Tyler Myers or something like that. So I guess we can correlate with Tyler Myers if you want.
Oh man, Lane Peterson and Tyler Myers. That's nice. I think we go with it.
All right. Our first lineup has Lane Peterson and Tyler Myers. This is absolutely going to be a smash winner. So 4,700 left. And this is where you can use, the filters on the projections tool. So you can go up to 4,700 to see who's left in that range. So Devin Taves at the top by far. I haven't been a Devin Taves fan. I know the projections still take prior seasons into account a lot. He just really hasn't done a lot this season. I think a lot of the injuries to the forwards, but that's something that bothered me a little bit. Colton Parayko is going to get top power play minutes for St. Louis tonight. So I think, he's in play. Dmitry Orlov is probably going to have to play heavy minutes for Washington with Carlson out. Is there anybody in that range that's kind of sticking out to you?
Yeah, I think we got a bunch of good options. I think Taze is fine. I don't love him as a one-off, though. Not a really high shot volume guy. So since we're not playing Colorado here, I'd probably go with someone like Parayko in an increased role, or Orlov. Either one of those two is perfectly fine with me.
I'm going to slide in Orlov just because I think Parayko's a little bit overvalued considering the matchup. I do like Orlov. I think he's going to have to play heavy minutes tonight, so we'll slide him in.
Cool. Yeah. And so that's just an example of how you would build a lineup with the lineup builder. I think it's an awesome tool. You can export right off of that and then import it into your DraftKings or FanDuel CSV. You can do the same thing for FanDuel. The pricing is just a little bit wonky over there. But I really love using the lineup builder. I use it every day to look at implied totals, ownership, projection, all that. It's just a great view of everything. And if you want access to everything that we've done today, we've talked about the top stacks tool, the projections, looking for value defensemen, just value players, goalies overall, the lineup builder. If you click the link below in the description, so it's right there. It is the third link you're going to see in the description right there. It says free 3-day trial to the Stokastic Plus NHL right there. You get a free 3-day trial. It's exactly what it is. You'll get to try out everything that we've talked about for today. And right now, I think is a great time to use this deal because it's the 3 days is going to cover today. So you got 11 games tonight. Really big contest. There's a queue tonight if you're in on that. Nice 5-gamer tomorrow. And then another 11-gamer on Thursday that should also be filled with some really great contests. So I don't think there's a better time to sign up than right now, especially when the schedule's evened out. You get your 3 days. You can cancel anytime, but I think you're going to probably want to stick around and make sure you get in Discord right away when you do redeem that in the description, because the Discord is where you're going to go find late breaking news and then just general advice, people talking hockey, other things, but a lot of hockey talk in there. I think Discord is the best value add that we have outside of the tools being awesome. We've got guys like Alex, Steve Buzzard, Sean Zahn, other big names, myself, maintaining the tools. I wasn't a big part of actually coming up with them, but I do maintain the inputs and stuff. And so I would recommend getting in right now. If you've thought about this, the free 3-day trial right now is a great chance to do it. And if you do it using the description below, Cliffy and Josh will get credit for it. So doing the hard sell on you guys, but I do think it actually is a great offer and it's literally no risk to you guys, along with all the other stuff we talked about, like BetMGM. It's risk-free. Anytime you can take advantage of stuff like that, there's no reason really to not do it. Cliffy, hat trick pick.
I'm going, I hate to give it away, but I think I'm going to be going Jets tonight. So I'm going to be going with Kyle Connor.
All right. Winnipeg Flowchart is in business here. I've got Kevin Fiala I actually kind of like that he's been in a bit of a slump, but still putting a lot of shots on goal. This is a guy that can get really hot very quickly, as you saw last year with Minnesota. Hasn't really recaptured that form yet, but that line is playing well, and I think it's a really good 5-on-5 spot. Obviously, a top power play guy as well for the Kings. So I like Fiala in the late night hammer against the Knights, especially if he's going up against the likes of Phil Kessel and co. Goalies. We mentioned a couple while we were building a lineup. Any goalies that you want to point out here?
Yeah, I wrote up Stuart Skinner in the picks article. The Oilers' penalty kill is the issue here. It's something that has let them down, and it could bite them against Calgary. But Calgary takes a lot of shots at 5-on-5 and doesn't score at a commensurate rate. So if the Oilers can somehow not let Skinner down on the PK, I think he could put up a good number here tonight. I think he's top 3 or top 4 projected for saves by our goalie stats tool. So Skinner, Ilya Sorokin, I'll always play him when he's at home at that price on DraftKings in particular. I should say 7,400. UC Saros is another goalie at home. It's a 3.1 total against with Dallas, but that's not excessive or anything like that. And he's been really good of late. So another cheap goalie there I like. Also Igor. Got to mention Igor at home to the Caps without John Carlson, without Oshie, without Backstrom, without Wilson. They're really going through it. So I'll mention Igor Shesterkin as well.
Yeah, I like for spend ups, Thompson, Jari, both 8K. And then Sorokin. I had Pavelka written down, and then we saw the news with him not starting tonight, so don't play him. Ingram is 7,000, I believe. He's a little bit cheaper than Pavelka, but that takes some stones. So I guess if you're trying to be great, you're trying to win it all, go and play some Connor Ingram. But I will not be doing that very often tonight. NBA Deeper Dive and Live Before Lock starts at 3:45 my time, 4:45 Eastern time. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you want to check that out later. Thank you guys for watching. Again, make sure you use the link in the description when you redeem your free trial. And we'll talk to you all in Discord. Josh and Cliffy will be back with you tomorrow afternoon. Good luck, everybody.
Good luck tonight, everyone.